Well, welcome everyone. This is the Spring Emeriti Lecture with Kathy Foley, who's Professor Emerita of Theater Arts in the Department of Performance, Play, and Design at UC Santa Cruz. I'm Eli Silver, and I'm still the president of the Emeriti Association. So this lecture happens twice a year in collaboration between the Emeriti Association and the Chancellor's Office, and would like to thank Chancellor Lurie for supporting the series. The function of the lectures is to highlight the research, teaching, and philanthropy carried out by many Emeriti. The title of tonight's lecture is Puppets, Performance, Percussion, Asia-Pacific Interculturalism, Avant-Gardism, and the Center for World Music. And after the talk, there will be time for questions. The lecture will be recorded and made available on the Emeriti Association's YouTube channel. Now I'd like to invite the incomparable Patty Gallagher, who's also Professor of Theater Arts in the Department of Performance, Play, and Design, to introduce Kathy.
Hi, friends. What a wonderful choice the Faculty Emeriti Association has made in honoring Kathy Foley. And what a joy it is to see her students, her collaborators, her department, and campus colleagues come to not just to honor her, but as always, to be inspired by her work and her words. Professor Foley's groundbreaking work is both interdisciplinary and multicultural, at once classical and contemporary. Her work on mask, puppetry, dance, and clown traditions finds aesthetic, cultural, and political resonances across historical eras and geographic boundaries. Her work not only traces links between ancient forms and current performance innovations, but it also uncovers how world diplomacy and political policy shape artistic and aesthetic practice. Kathy has the unique capacity to mark how artists and their performances emerge from and press against specific and ever-shifting socio-political milieu. Kathy began her global research early in her education. She got her MA from University of Massachusetts Amherst and her doctorate from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. She was inspired by the French clown teacher and movement teacher Jacques Lecoq, and after that, she began to be inspired to investigate puppetry and mask practices. And that curiosity led her around the globe to investigate puppetry practices in a variety of cultures. Her puppetry studies led her to Indonesia, both Bali and Java, and as you will hear more about tonight, to Berkeley, to the Center for World Music. Her collaborators include the late composer Lou Harrison, the great Balinese artist Pat Nyoman Sumandi. Kathy was the first woman Balinese dalang, or master puppeteer and storyteller. In fact, after seeing Kathy perform wayang, Pat Sumandi realized that, women can do wayang, and he began encouraging other women to pursue the art form. That's just one example of the way that Kathy is a trailblazer and a groundbreaker. In Bandung, West Java, Kathy worked with the gamelan of Dalang Sunaria, learning Sundanese wayang golek. Kathy was the first international dalang invited to perform at the prestigious Indonesian National Wayang Festival. Since 1980, Kathy has performed and taught wayang golek on our university stages, in local schools, and at hundreds of museums, festivals, and universities around the world, including countries as far away as Australia, Thailand, Laos, Indonesia. Beyond Kathy's scholarship on wayang and mask theater, she has also studied Burmese marionettes and Vietnamese water puppets. She has curated exhibits of Asian puppets for the East-West Center, for the National Geographic Society, and the Center for Puppetry Arts. She served as a board member of UNIMA. She might tell you more about what that is later, UNIMA USA and UNIMA International. For over 15 years, she was the editor and guide of the Asian Theater Journal, which is truly a remarkable feat in my field. Her work has received support from Fulbright, from the East-West Center, and from the Yale Institute of Sacred Music. She served on award panels from as local as the Pacific Rim Film Fest to the prestigious and global, including the Kyoto Prize and the National Research Foundations. It's 4 minutes. I was given 5. I have an entire page of her remarkable work, but Eli will give me the hook. So let me just say, moving away from her global work, I'd like to point out the enormous impact that she has had locally on the University of Santa Cruz campus. Since she joined the campus in 1980, she has been a model for how to be a teacher, a mentor, an artist and scholar, and a tireless university citizen. Kathy serves and serves and serves, and all of us have been the beneficiaries of that service. The depth of gratitude and admiration that so many of us have for Kathy Foley can't really be fathomed, and I'd like to give you an example. Kathy, as you know, was the Porter Provost for many years. And a more recent Porter Provost said that one of his favorite things about being provost was coming into the Porter Provost College house and hitting the answering machine and hearing messages from sometimes students from continents away and decades ago who wanted to leave messages for the former provost, Kathy Foley, to tell her about the ways that she has changed their lives. Now, I'm one of the people whose life has been changed by Kathy Foley. That's another conversation for another time. But one of the most annoying things about having my life changed by Kathy Foley is that you can't tell her about it. She will not hear your admiration, your depth of gratitude, your fangirlness. She just bats it away. And so I'd really like to end by saying, Eli, thank you so much for giving me the microphone for 3 minutes to hold her captive while I get to tell the world what a brilliant and remarkable person Kathy Foley is. Kathy, it's been nice to watch you squirm for these last 3 minutes. My friends, with a joyous and a deeply grateful heart, I call to the floor our beloved and extraordinary colleague, Dr. Kathy Foley.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes, they turned on the mic. So what we're going to do is, I'm not going to give you that much of puppets. And don't believe everything that Patty Gallagher says. But we are going to have puppets, performance, and percussion tonight. To start with, I should say there's this acting exercise in Lecoq-style mask work in which the clown announces that he will demonstrate some fantastic feat. And something like live forever, levitate, open the straits of Hormuz. The laughs come as the viewers realize the pathos of the colossal failure. During doing this Emeriti lecture is an exercise in clowning. How do you fit feet into footsteps like those who stood here before? Gail Hershitter, detailing exemplars of Chinese 20th century transformations. Diane Gifford Gonzalez, telling how the archaeologist becomes a person in service to the local Ohlone Indians. And given that this is probably my last day, my last say on a stage at UCSC, where as a faculty member, provost, collaborator, you've shared the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, earthquakes, floods, fires, death, demonstrations, all that flesh on UCSC campus is heir to. Given that, how can you pontificate like a commedia il dottore to you, my peers, who are smarter than me and more profound? What were those last 7 words that were said, and what did they really mean? I really want to thank Eli and Christy, the Emeriti Association, for even asking me to talk. At the same moment, you're making good on my promise to give some public lecture because they gave me some Dixon money, which was about this particular topic. So, thank you. And I'll give you a little bit about how I, as an Irish Catholic girls' school nobody from Waukegan, Illinois, ended up becoming a first female dalang, performer of Indonesian wayang, in an all-male performing arts genre in Bali and West Java. That's what the Center for World Music was about. How was it that I then started teaching and educating and tried to communicate a form that has sort of psychological and spiritual pay dirt? And then I tried to do it in the US. It's totally amazing that I had any kind of career. Thanks to all of you who are present for hearing my blather, and hopefully you'll at least get a laugh now and then. So Eli, make sure you have that hook ready and give me the high five sound when I'm going on too long. First thing I'm going to do is, this is the Center for World Music, 1974, 1975, I guess 51 years now. Let's see if this works. These are some of the things that people said about their experience. I was not aware that at the time of the profound way my spirit was being transformed, how the whole rest of my life was going to veer off in a unique direction. My aesthetic values, my dancer's eye, my ear for music, it would never be the same. And I found myself addicted to an organization that was providing me with the artistic nourishment that my soul would forever need. This was Emily Main. She was a Bharatanatyam dancer from the center who became a 5th-year student here in our theater arts program at that point. And of course, Bob Brown, who was the director of the Center for World Music, wanted to make a year-round program to encompass all the global perspective of the arts. Fortunately, Sam Scripps showed enthusiasm. So what we'll have tonight is a little bit of the Kayon. It's a tree of life. It's everything in the universe, earth, air, water, fire. We'll then have some of the past that leads into what the Center for World Music was. There will be a gara-gara scene. That's the world in chaos, when you see all of the different audience scenes from the different kingdoms that were included within the center. There will be a fight. Someone always dies. The program died in 1975 when Sam Scripps, who was funding it, and Bob Brown, who was the artistic director, had disagreements. And it will all end with the mantra, the flower has been picked, may its fragrance spread. Some of that knowledge spread out to many of us who had this experience, spreads out, I hope, to bid to you, and may even blow over to the people who are over in the gamelan room right now, doing their first classes in this particular tradition. So these are the character types. We're going to do a 5-minute demonstration so that you can see them, and you will know that we're going to do the 4 version of it with the clown in the center. So that's north, south, east, west, earth, air, water, fire, the mountain, the fields, the village, the ocean, and the volcano for the south. They're the different colors. It's everything which is within a Sufi version of an earlier Hindu version of how you represent the cosmos. So the tree of life is that, these masks are that. What you are talking about in this particular art form is as a puppeteer or a masked dancer. The most important forms are one-person shows, which are to stretch you out from the illusion that you may have that you are just this one little puppet of a certain age, certain gender, certain class, all of the things that we do in DEI. That's the illusion. You step into the world of art and you realize that whatever is going on in Iran or whatever is going on in here, it's all part of the same system. It's just the top of your head to the gut, and those different points up your spine, those are the battles of the universe. And it spreads out into story. We're going to introduce just the characters as some of the background, and then we'll show you some of the American permutations of this. So our first character type, this is Margot Lederer, who has come along, and so we can save some time, and she dances much better than I do as well. So we'll do some of the character types and voices. This is the first character type. This is the baby rolling around in the womb before he was born, and the top of the mountain, the divine characters, all of them move in this drum beat. Undang Sumarna is our drummer tonight. Thanks, Undang. Da 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 da. Matzeman, I wish to offer my humble samba, my humble greetings. At the present time, we go to the kingdom of Lenka, searching for Sinta. Ayo. So character type number 2, this is adolescence, fertility, the rice, all of those kinds of things is associated with this character, and you're just doing a more nasal placement for the voice. So. I wish to offer my humble samba, my humble greetings. Alas, I am in the kingdom of Alenka at the present time. My heart is filled with sorrow. I know not where my husband is. I know not what to do. This is maturity. Everyone who's an associate professor is dancing this role, and all of the staff. So it's Tumengung. Hey, I wish to offer my humble samba, my humble greetings. Hey, at the present time, there's danger everywhere. There's dissension and unhappiness. We must deal with it now. This is the mask I'm dancing right now. This is Clona. As you get near death and things like that, it's also the volcanoes, it's trouble. Present time, I have taken Lady Cinta captive. She will be mine. In this time. Pamampati, come here near me. What a day. This is Klana. He's making a mess all over the place. There are budget cuts in the kingdom. There's unhappiness everywhere. Even in the internal kingdom, everyone is turning against everybody. They're closing the gates. I don't know what to do. And I should, because I'm the God clown. I'm Samar, high God of the universe, first thing that came out of the cosmic egg. Hey. I think we'll let it go there. Thank you, Undan. So this is the clown, who is the first principle out of the cosmic egg. If you've ever wondered why life is so tough, you have the Kion here. He comes up. He has a black body, represents the night. White face is the day, half male, half female, the original trans, and many, many other things are part of the genre and the background of this. So he's the lowest character, but he's also the highest. So thank you so much, Undang and Margot. So they're both part of the Center for World Music. That's where I first met Margot. Undang's first coming to America was because of that program. There were many people. We had 45 wonderful teachers that year. I'm going to try and get out of this thing so I can, let's see, how do I get out of here? It's strange, let's see, exit and show temporarily. And I hope on my screen we can see the videotape I want to show you. You can find there. and let me get out of this and go back again. I know to you it looks like it's Africa. And you're saying, sitting there saying, what does this have to do with wayang? But of course, Julie was first exposed to Indonesian wayang at the ASCA Center for World Music. And I'll go back into this. It may take a minute to come back on. You may not see it, but now you may see it. That tree that is used in the backdrop is really the kayon, the tree of life. The use of character types, the refined da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da for your hero, the gruff or the fighting one for the uncle. I know it's a Shakespeare story, but still the way the characters are graphed into the production, certainly the use of puppetry, that's really where she got exposed to puppetry. First at Center for World Music, and of course following up going, the use of the clown characters, the meerkat and the warthog, the above-the-head masks, which are really it's a Southeast Asian tradition, more in Thailand and that area for the top of the head things, rather than the full mask ones, which you see primarily down in Indonesia. But what she's doing is taking that idea that you find embedded within Indonesian wayang and transposing it into, of course, a pre-existing Disney film, and using the kinds of techniques that she had experimented with from first learning traditional Indonesian things, and then, of course, going beyond. So this experimentation first started the interest for many of us. Julie herself had spent time with Lecoq work as well. So it was the search of the mask, the search of the puppet, an ability to get beyond Stanislavski realism that only uses this life, this body. You'll only be cast as the age, the class, the type that you are. How can you burst out of that and be all the different dimensions, the volcano, the top of the mountain, the god and the demon, things like that, is one of the techniques that this thing is about. And it happened in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, in the 1960s and the 1970s, that there was the philanthropy and the vision and the interest that made this strange institution start and launched many people on their way into explorations of Indian, Indonesian, Korean, all different kinds of East Asian arts primarily, and Pacific Rim thinking. So there was something about the Bay Area in the 1960s. In Bali, you say kala desapatra, that's time, place, and circumstance. Explain things. It was a time when you could easily travel. I hitchhiked from England to India overland. You had to jump over Vietnam, of course. I landed in Korea. Part of my interest in the Korean material began from being a donut dolly up by the DMZ. So you could get a ticket, an airplane ticket from Pan Am and fly your trip around the world, and you'd see these performances. This is a story for many of my co-students at the Center for World Music. They had seen stuff, they didn't know what it was, but they knew that it had something to do with the kind of arts and vibrancy that was going on within that area. And within that time period, Kala time, there was rock festivals, there were folk music revivals, the Smithsonian Folklife Festival was starting. It was the performance group doing improvised Dionysian-type theater. It was the Beatles going to India, Beans in the Golden Gate Park. It was the Hare Krishna people who were dancing in front of you at every airport. It was the parades by Bread and Puppet Circus that were going on with Vietnam things. It was the agitation as we were trying to stop the war. There's the car being stopped when we were working for McCarthy and got gassed by the Chicago police. It was that kind of a time. And so it's some of these political, social, cultural changes in the wake of World War II, and as that generation born after that was growing up, it led to the birth of this idea of world arts, ethnomusicology, Asian theater, and there was money, there was philanthropy, there was funding that really allowed people to do it, and there was cheap travel and open borders. The vision was really that of Sam and Louise Scripps. Louise fell in love with Indian dance as a dancer. She was married to Sam Scripps. He was the TD director down at the Old Globe in San Diego, and then was very important at the Shakespeare Festival up in Marin when they moved up here to Oakland. And then throughout his life, he supported those arts that he and Louise were interested in. Things like the New Globe in London. He was one of the major funders and supporters of that project. Theater for Young Audiences, which continues to exist in New York. So she fell in love with India. Sam got himself a gamelan. He needed people to play it, or things like that. And so people like Undan came over here for the first time. It was the Scripps family tradition of philanthropy. His great aunt, Ellen Browning Scripps, is many of the places that are named after Scripps in Southern California, or the colleges and other things were part of her doing. So there's a family legacy and model. The third person who came in early on and had the Indian musical expertise was Bob Brown. And he had this vision of what he called world music. He's supposed to have invented the term. He'd gotten his PhD at UCLA, started out with piano, but through a teacher I'll talk about in a little while, had been exposed to Indonesian music as well. He went many other places over the years, ended up in San Diego. Right now I'm only talking about the early period when Sam, Louise, and Bob Brown were working together. In 1975, it all fell apart and became a different institution. So the beginning was Bala Saraswati. And of course, the Indian dancer, Tem Ta, needs her musicians, who in this case were her brothers, Vishwanathan and Ranganathan, who came over. The first encounter, the first time she left in India, was in 1961. There was an East-West music encounter, which was funded basically by the US government. There was anti-nuclear demonstrations that were going on. They wanted to use the idea of soft power, get more of the Japanese to support this thing. And one of the ideas of the ambassador or somebody in the cultural department was an East-West musical encounter, and people like John Cage, Lou Harrison, that's where they first saw Bala Saraswati. Beate Gordon, who has fascinating history with Japan and other things I don't have time to tell you about, but she, realizing the expertise in dance, the beautiful abhinaya and expression that Bala was capable of, soon invited her over here. And when she came with Asia Society support to Jacob's Pillow, the dance festival, that is when Louise and Sam had the chance to meet and talk to and try dancing with Bala Saraswati and decided that she had to start coming over here and teaching students in a traditional guru-student kind of relationship. So the whole concept was you would learn as you might within the traditional system in the Asian country where that genre existed. So they created a nonprofit, the American Society for Eastern Arts. It moved up and down a little bit on the West Coast and was primarily a summer program. And people would come from all over the country, first to study with Bala. Very soon, Ali Akbar Khan came on by 1965. Of course, he broke off in a few years and created his own college. But Bala was the through line for the scripts, at least. And she was brought over to teach many places until her death. She was always doing training for the group. So this was Bala's class in 1974 and 1975. You can see the mixture of the Hauli, the people who had trained for a year, a couple of years in the program, who are doing the backup for her brothers, who are doing the Natyavar syllables and the musical things. People in the classes would say things like, Bharatanatyam was a crucible for me. Studying it required me to search my soul, wrestle with inner demons. I learned discipline, detailed practice, performing a form of spiritual practice. And it doesn't dry up. As Bala once said, it is as deep as the ocean. So people who were in that class, here's a few images of them. Lakshmi Knight, who is Bala's daughter, had not trained in the dance because it was associated with courtesan culture. This was the period of time when the Brahmin women were taking over the discipline, and the Devadasis, the traditional dancers, were not daring to teach their daughters since they would never have a appropriate marriage or other things. It was outlawed and other things like that. But when you came to the States, you could dance. So that created an argument back and forth between the Dasi component with the higher class ones that I'll talk about a little bit later. Meda Yoda was living in Southern California, and she became part of that class and taught for many years at UCLA in their dance ethnology program. Angie Brenneman, her husband, did things with international work, and she had been exposed to Bharatanatyam in traveling with her family, and then came back and found out that Bala was here, and her school is still active within the Bay Area. Here are some of the second generation people, that is, people who were taught. Ani Knight is the grandson of Bala Saraswati, has a major school now in Chennai, formerly called Madras, and that's where Louise's archive is, and you can go and see all of the materials that are background of the Bala Saraswati School of the Arts. Judy Van Zyl was the dance ethnology teacher at the University of Hawaii, where I was exposed a little more to some of the Bharatanatyam things. And Deepika Natarajan is the person, the younger person within Angie Brenneman's school. So this is a tradition that's carried on. I think if you look at it today, back in the 70s, it was a lot of Caucasian women. There were a lot of Hare Krishna people who turned up sometimes for the Bharatanatyam training or classes. I think now you see mostly Indian, Indian diaspora people within it. This is the 50-year anniversary of the Center for World Music. You'll see Margot, who just danced, is there, and introducing, I think, the people from Ali Akbar Khan's school. Bob Brown did not only do Indian things, that's what his thesis was on, but in going to Wesleyan, which had a lot of IBM stock as it shot up and decided to have a PhD program in world music. As a result of that, he started to know all of the people who were available within Indonesian things. And this is the gamelan that Sam Scripps bought, and then of course he needed people who could play it. And therefore, although the West Javanese tradition is a little different than the Javanese, Central Javanese tradition, which is what this gamelan is. That's why first Pat Chokro was bought into the Center for World Music, and very soon after that, West Java and Undang, Bali. Here's some of the teachers' names. You don't have to read them all. There were 45. They were all magnificent teachers, and he made sure they were also great performers. So it was like it seemed like every night, but I guess it was mostly 1 or 2 nights a week, you would have a world-class performance. All the people that when you were hitchhiking across these countries, you only saw the sort of middling performers, but every one of these people was a master artist, deeply trained. It was incredible. These are just a few of them, and I'll only talk about a few. There's no time to talk about all of the different traditions. These are some of the students. Later on, we'll talk about a few of them. But again, it made differences for people in theater, music. Many people went into foundation work, especially within the cultural sector or arts. So people like Asia Society producers or Ford Foundation, who build up ethnomusicology programs in Indonesia or India or all those things. Asian studies, certainly. Producers who were interested in, quote, what was then called non-Western arts, and a plethora of dancers and just crazy people who wanted to play. Also people like Baba Ram Das, Richard Alpert. There were all kinds of people. It was San Francisco in the era of the Summer of Love and all of that. So it was an amazing scene. Where had all this come from? Why did it happen right then? There had been religio-philosophical changes in the world. Education and philanthropy things had been modeled for institutions like the Center for World Music before its creation, and the idea that you'd move into heritage arts, folk arts, or include something beyond elite European arts was in the wind in that. The colonial mindset was gone. All of these countries were now independent, even if the dollar was stronger, and therefore allowed us sort of wet behind the ears Americans to work with the greatest masters of various tradition. Before this began, there were a lot of crazy people going on. I will mention the Theosophists and people like Gujarif. Both of these institutions, I don't have time to talk about them now, but these were institutions that were looking beyond Christianity and male-dominated patriarchal religions. So crazy women could impart and understand spirituality and teaching, and they, saw the masters from India and started breaking out. There were people like Gujarif, more active in Europe. But at the Center for World Music, I met people who were second-generation Gujari families that they came from. So there is some of this background of, finding difference. We may call it Orientalism or other things like that. There were models, especially in relation to the Indian material. Tagore had created Shantinikatan, a school in India that would have new teaching of the arts, and the new arts would be born out of the old. Kalakshetra was the theosophical school. Again, that's where the Brahmin ladies were doing Bharatanatyam as they were trying to prevent the dasis like Bala Saraswati from carrying on their tradition. Other things that were going on, of course, groups like Denny Shawn, who did Orientalist kind of dances, but they were so interested that they then went to India and Indonesia and started taking lessons. So it was the first time that Europeans started flipping over from the colonial mindset of writing about what the people, the natives, are doing. People started doing what the natives had done, and the natives were their teachers or other things like that. So it was a transformation in understanding of the arts. The model of Shantiniketan, of course, called up Dartington Hall, which was a very important school for the arts, which combined European modernism and avant-gardism, along with people like Ravi Shankar, Uday Shankar, other things, because Lord Elmhurst was the secretary to Tagore, and his wife, Dorothy, was of the Eli Whitney's family, a couple generations down, but still a lot of money. So philanthropy and creating schools that would have different relationship to in that period, the colonized peoples and their arts. Other things were happening here. Black Mountain College, of course, is an example. Lou Harrison was there as the head of the music program. He gave the I Ching to John Cage. Voila, we have performance art and happenings. We have everybody running from the Bauhaus in this period of time. It's the 1930s now. All of those people who are doing experimental things with Laban and other people in Germany, most of them are Jews, so they're making it out of town to Dartington Hall, to Black Mountain College, and this interface between interest in things that point out toward the Pacific, such as Lou and his work from the very beginning, become part of what's happening. There are scholars too, again, the ones who are interested in Asia happen to be Jews, and therefore they end up in the 1930s here. Jaap Kunst could stay in Holland. He was not Jewish, but he did become the teacher for Mantle Hood, who started the ethnomusicology program down at UCLA. But Kurt Sachs, World Dance, that started along with Boas in Columbia, in New York, was bringing this idea of world dance forward. Eric von Hornbostel is another important person. Meanwhile, of course, there were mask things that we've already talked about. I'll just refer, Jacques Coupeau is a generation before, but Jacques Lecoq and Carlo Mazzone Clemente, who ends up founding Blue Lake College, the Del Arte Company up in Northern California. They are in search of the mask, and people who are coming from this acting tradition, of course, are turning toward Japanese masks, looking at things that are going on in Bali and other places. There are women too. Tara DeClean is part of that. Again, a heavy-duty theosophist who is starting to try and do some of the Javanese dance or the Balinese dance so that she can use it in her art and books. Swedish aristocrat. Claire Holt from Latvia, once again a Jew who had to end up in the US. Also, she worked for the CIA, all kinds of things, but a very good Javanese dancer who helped found the Southeast Asia Studies program at Cornell. Is being funded by philanthropy from Swedish aristocrats who are interested in the combination of folk, Asian, and contemporary dance and music. Rolf de Meer, who again is a huge other person in this. Burl de Zoot is another. She's the partner of Arthur Whaley, who does lots of Japanese translations, works at the British Museum. She's going out and trying to learn the dance, working with people like Walter Spies and there when Bateson and Margaret Mead and everybody else is in Bali in the 1930s. After the war, you're in a new position. It's post-colonial, the borders are more open, the Cold War is going on, so people's eyes are more aware of Asian things, sometimes because you're fighting in those wars and come back with knowledge about the theater of other things. And they're also, especially after the Sputnik thing, there starts to be funding for area studies program, especially where there's interface with the third world that might go to the second world and those Russians. I guess some things may not change that much. So all of this creates a worldling of music, dance, and theater. And the foundations, often associated with political things, also get on board. Very heavy duty are the Rockefeller Foundation, Asia Society, Asian Cultural Council. Those are all different names, different branches of Rockefeller money. The Ford Foundation establishes offices in all these places, and luckily all the graduates of the Center for World Music can get jobs after they do some of their studying of music or dance, and then help the programs in the arts in those areas. It is also a tale of 4 schools that are going on. There are more than this, I admit, but for the West Coast, these are some of the most important. UCLA as a starting point, Wesleyan University, which, as I said, uses IBM money to create a world music program, Cal Arts, and Bob Brown hits all those places and takes people from all those places. Mantle Hood was the one who brought the idea of bimusicality to UCLA. It is very soon picked up within the dance department by Allegra Fuller Snyder, Buckminster Fuller's daughter, who had seen Black Mountain College and other things. She was interested in, the Asian and Pacific material. And Hood is very good at getting funding. And the area studies, they're bringing so many people from Indonesia and India and Burma, and any place that they're worried about. You can get a grant for a good artist, since they will be an influence maker later on. So as well as the political scientists, we find wonderfully trained people who are turning up in these programs and getting graduate degrees, and then being hired very often by the University of Hawaii, where Barbara Smith realizes she has lots of students from an Asian diaspora and they only know how to play piano. So she starts hiring all the people coming out of dance ethnology, music, so Rick Tremillos, Harjo Cecilia, Judy Van Zyl, who I said was one of the Bharatanatyam people. All of them go, along with people who had been censors during the occupation in Japan for the theater program. And Japan at that time had a strong communist movement. The Korean War had gone on. That's when Jim Brandon was there. So all of these people were sent by the army to make sure that people were not doing propaganda against America. And they became interested in those arts, started studying the practice of them, and then came back and founded graduate programs and undergraduate programs that allowed people to learn with those arts and artists, bringing over the artists when they could get the funding. So I'm going to go through just as fast as I can a few of the manifestations of this. I'd say in the first generation, we just We just did it. You learned from your teacher. You would do some writing to describe it. Most of these things had not really been cataloged. Many things like wayang. Wayang is not a literary tradition. You improvise the performance as you're going on. You remind yourself of the plot outline, but you talk to a Dalang and you say, what show are you doing tonight? Oh, I don't know, or things like that, and turned up. And if the person asked for a particular story, you do that. Or you can just make up a story while you go along. You put all the characters together and you know who's in the audience, so you try and play to that. So the first generation, I would say, largely is just doing it. This early group coming out of the Center for World Music, their students after that are coming to the university and often learning these arts in the context of programs all through the UCs, University of Hawaii, and many other places. Start programs because they're thinking about diversity and other things like that in that period, but also it is a much more theorized practice that is going on, so gender studies, post-colonialism, Orientalist critiques of people, those few generations before, especially those terrible theosophists and other things like that, will be part of the writing and the analysis, the papers, and the teaching that they do. So people are really looking at the borders and saying, well, what's going on here? For the third generation, I'd say they do it, but I think today people are more wary about the borders, certainly, than we were. We can still go over and gather 3,000 people if you're doing a performance in Sunda, just because you speak Sundanese. It's like the Martian landing and playing good basketball or something like that is what I used to say. I used to be very famous there, and you get invited to perform in big festivals just because you're a complete oddity. But for the third generation, I think performing here is harder. It's easier in music. If your body is a holy body, people are going to say, well, aren't you appropriating that? Aren't you an Orientalist? Or other things like that. And we'll push the Asian-looking person to the first row, even though the teacher may be that blonde in the back row for that early Bharatanatyam thing. So there are changes that are going on. I'll talk about some of them. People studied Bali. This is Nyoman Samandi. He's already, I think, been mentioned. Taught the Balinese wine class, got his degree from Wesleyan, and taught many of us that. Nyoman Sadana, certainly one of his strong students was Julie Tamer. She was also doing some of the Javanese wayang. I don't have time for all of those people right now, but she got a Watson Fellowship when she graduated from Oberlin, went to Indonesia, started doing contemporary and traditional theater there and new puppetry. Her first experiments were there. She walked over to the Ford Foundation, and she was a lady with balls. She got them to fund her. I remember when she turned up at the East-West Center when I was a student there. And we took her around. She was gathering more funds for some of her projects, which she later brought over to New York, and a student of Mel Helstein, who did Indian theater down at UCLA when all of that stuff in ethnomusicology, dance ethnology, and theater is starting to change. And so he, as a producer for Disney, said, okay, she's doing the kind of work that could really do an interesting Lion King. Michael Curry is someone who basically Julie trained up to do some of his work. Nowadays, I think he's doing Taylor Swift and other things. That means we're getting near the end. So I better move fast. Taylor Swift, this is the Vancouver Olympics, but many of the people who do puppetry, know parts of this, and they do big productions. Michael does wonderful stuff. Another example is Larry Reed. He just died recently, unfortunately. Shadowlight Theater up in San Francisco was his company. A couple of people that are sort of out of his lineage in the second generation are people like Hamid Rahmanian. Right now he's doing a Shahnameh piece. He's an Iranian-American, but he's doing his Shahnameh, Song of the North, down at the Pasadena Playhouse, I think right now, using the kind of shadow technique that Larry developed after working with Sumandi. Made Sidia is very important. He's the head of the dance department in Bali, in Denpasar at the school, and he studied with Bali, did some of his productions when they took them to Bali, and started doing his own big screen production. And now there's a World Bank meeting or something like that. He's the one the government hires to do spectacles that will wow all those bigwigs that come to Indonesia. Sekar Jaya is a very important gamelan up in the Bay Area. Wayan Suecha, who's in the picture in the middle here, was the teacher from the Center for World Music, and with him you see Rachel Cooper, who now does the productions for the Asia Society, and Michael Tenzer, who bought the gamelan that started that particular institution. There are many other people I should talk about, but I'm going to keep going on. Linda Berman Hall was involved in this and therefore bought the Balinese gamelan here to Santa Cruz and started that angklung. Some of her students include Brian Baumbush, who teaches the Balinese class right now, Zach Henji, who's currently over in Bali, I think still teaching at the University of the Arts in Bali right now. He got a Fulbright just as he was finishing up his DFA here. Both of them are in composition, so they're really both sort of in the contemporary American gamelan movement more than the sort of traditional heritage writing thing. For Java, it was Pat Choko, who was from the palace in Yogyakarta, there, who became sort of the master artist. Some of his students include Jody Diamond, who started the gamelan at Dartmouth and did Balongan, which does, contemporary gamelan all over the world. Philip Yompolsky, again, Center for World Music person doing the Javanese program there, and he did a huge record series for the Smithsonian. Did the Ford Foundation funding of cultural projects for a decade or more, is now back here in the States, but he was a very important person. The music critics and other things talked about how important the Center for World Music in that area of 1975 really was for this new movement in minimalism. People like Philip Glass, John Adams, Steve Reich. Steve was in the classes and working with Lou Harrison and other people on some of the things, doing concerts with Laura Dean, who was doing some of the Gujarati kind of spinning classes that we had there. And also, as a result of that, we soon had a lot of gamelan programs in the CSUs, in the UC system. Right now, I think there are 7 campuses that have gamelans. Lou Harrison was a force unto himself. He just did it, but he did it in his own way with just intonation and other things. But Lou was a wonderful artist who was interested in the music of the past and the music of the world. He'd been turned on by Henry Cowell and that kind of listening that started in the 1939 World's Fair or something at that point in time. And when Lou got into these puppet things, we did a number of collaborations. That image at the bottom is his young Caesar, which this is a later manifestation. I think the LA Philharmonic did a production or the opera a few years back, and that is that. So another Javanese person was Judy Matoma, who did the dance ethnology, turned it into world arts at UCLA after coming out of the Center for World Music, took the vision that Bob Brown developed of taking students to Bali. So Chudamani, which is a summer program that you can sign up for right now over in Bali. Judy is still doing that. She's a wonderful Javanese dancer, worked a lot with Peter Sellers, the opera, and also within the World Arts program down at UCLA. Her daughter, Emiko Cecilo, ran Sekarjaya Gamelan up in the Bay Area for a number of years and is now doing a lot of voice acting and cultural consulting with Disney. Raya was one of the projects that she worked a lot on and told them what they could and couldn't do. The last thing, of course, I'm going to talk about is Sunda, and that was really Undang, Patnugraha, Irawati Durban Arjo, Patrujita, for people like Margot and I. Okay, we're going to finish up. This is the first generation. We all just did it. The second generation does it, theorizes it, but Emily Main was also the hair model for The Little Mermaid and other things. Disney keeps popping up in these people who want to combine music, dance, and look at other worlds. Nyoman Sadana was our student here at UCSC. He's now head of the puppetry program in Denpasar. We had Suzanne Suwanda, who married a very good martial artist, and they used to come over and do projects with us here. Rayanne Stahl and her husband Burhan have a gamelan which continues over in San Jose. Henry Spiller created the gamelan program at UC Davis, did lots of theoretical work on gender and other issues. Andrew Weintraub, again a graduate of our program here in his undergraduate time, who works on the politics of the arts in Indonesia. The final generation I'll talk about is Ed Garcia, who's teaching right across the way tonight, doing the Sundanese-style gamelan, and Jay Arms, who's working at the University of Pittsburgh. Unfortunately, both of them are only lecturers, and therefore are perhaps not doing it as full-time. I think the borders are more guarded, but there's still lots of crossing. Think of Korea. Hee-young Park was my Korean dance teacher at the Center for World Music. After she did the Center for World Music, she was classically trained. She started looking into its roots of shamanism and turned into a New Age shaman, doing Korean workshops in Germany, usually. And her daughter, Jeannie Park, who I did, she's doing some Balinese and Javanese dance, even as a 9-year-old, and is now the head of the Javanese dance group, the Bagong Kusudiyarjo Foundation. Bagong studied with Martha Graham, but did a lot of new kind of fusion in Javanese dance. And she talks about how the Javanese arts, you open one door, there are 10 more doors in front of you, and it amounts to an attempt to understand life with all its mysteries, making it an unending journey. So lots of people got affected by this. They carried it into teaching of linguistics, anthropology, certainly the arts, doing contemporary music. They got jobs in foundations. They became theater makers. So it was now a different kind of Desikala Patra. Things have changed. Still, I think the impacts persist, even if the funding in philanthropy is drying up and the U.S. builds border walls, and hard power trumps soft power, still, many of us hold on to that idea or ideal of the ASEA Center for World Music model. So the flower has been picked, may its fragrance spread. Close the gate to Vishnu's palace. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy. That was really amazing. We may have a few minutes for questions. I believe we have microphones. So if you have a question, speak into the microphone. I'm sure you remember all of the people, so you don't have to. Yeah.
Thanks, Kathy. You're reminding me of when I first went to Bali and I thought I'd finally found the heart of anthropology, but now I see it's the heart of a lot of other things when we're over there. But I'm curious about a couple of things in the way that you presented. One of them, when you started off telling us that learning these practices move us beyond our particular positionality, gets us to understand other things. That seemed to be a high point for you. And as we move on to more and more doors closing so that people who are not of that ethnic group don't tend to learn those things, there seems to be a loss. Am I reading you correctly?
I think so. I think opening is what life is about. And certainly Wayang is saying, if it's not working, if you believe that you are just this one little thing, this is just the puppet, the body, and this is nothing. The energy that you are is all those other things. So anything divine, anything demonic. A Wayang is a fight between your left hand, your right hand, the top of your body, the bottom of your body. And it's not a Judeo-Christian thing or a modern realism thing. Usually our art is about teach and educate or, propaganda for or things like that. But at a certain point in time, the other things may have gotten cut off. And you can't play an animal, really, or, you can't understand the rock. This kind of practice says you can. You just step into the world of art, and you will be stretched out. So many of them are solo artists at the beginning, but Natyam is the same. Things like that. You play all the roles. And Wayang is like that. So the most important arts, at least in the Southeast Asia terrain, are about that.
Any other questions? Anybody online? Well, thank you again, Kathy.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, there was another question. Oh, way back.
Hi, Kathy. I was a student of yours in, 1983 to 85.
Wow.
You were my advisor for theater arts and Asian drama, dance drama. I played Sita one time in your Ramayana. Anyways, I'd like you to speak to how in Indonesia and in Bali, what I understand is people have a creative force, right? They choose to carve wood or puppetry or dance, and they don't need the backing financially, but it's more of like well, you know more than I do, but it seems to be like a spiritual
Yeah, it's a
path.
spiritual practice. It's nya'a. But it's also pressure from your village. You have to do something for every temple ceremony and other things like that. So there's social pressures that are involved, but to dance is to be human. I mean, we're walking along like this every day. We are not the refined character, nor can we too much be the klana or things like that. To exercise and exorcise. The idea is within performance, you pull in all of that bad and good stuff and bring it to a point of balance. So that's very much part of what goes on. There's also a lot of trance stuff that goes on, sort of at the ground level. So you're playing the demonic, but it's also the demonic divine. If we had more time, we could talk about early Tantrism that moves with Buddhism, Hinduism, that goes deeply into Sufi things. This clown, Samar, who is male, female, all of that thing, and the cosmic egg, is really the same clown who moves all the way across to Europe, but he hits a certain point, and because you're in a Judeo-Christian Islamic thing, at a certain border, he can only be the devil, or things like that. So that's really what punch is. But if you move the same character out east, he is the god, but also the ground. So it's just different philosophical and spiritual systems. And especially within the Euro-American tradition, when you're sort of cutting off religion and you don't want anybody to be really demonic or things like that, you don't exercise those same things to the same dimension within the world of art. So as a last thing, I think we're going to have to close down because there's some food upstairs, which you have deserved by listening to me. So this is probably my last lecture on a UCSC stage. And failure is always the fate of the clown. Even if they're like Samar, a kind of cosmic clown who came out of the cosmic egg. So listening to my fumbles, I thank you. I thank you for listening to some of the ancestors. I ask pardon of my Center for World Music peers, such as Undang and Margot, who are here. I've tried to dance on this campus the role that I was cast in. I've had the pride to work with some of you who have supported me so much. I think that's Carrie back there, though I can't see you in the dark. Wonderful students. It has been a pleasure to have the chance within the scope of this institution to do the dance. We live in a time of difficulty. We live in a time of building border walls higher, deeper, farther. But I ask you, to each of you, think about how easy it is to step into another type, another role, to realize they're all within you. And dancing across borders certainly made a difference in my life. I believe in the life of everybody who participated in these programs. And I believe it makes for a world which is wider, kinder, smarter, and more generous. Thank you so much. Avant-Gardism.